G'day, Duncan Free here, the Director of Sports Engagement at Griffith University. Welcome to our webinar, Say It, Prove It, Evidencing Your Transferable Skills from Elite Sport. Now this is a part of a series of webinars that we're doing as a part of our Graduate Ready program that we introduced last year to our sports college members. So it's really assisting student athletes in the planning and preparing for life after sport and uni, and allowing greater opportunities to arrive from that. Because there's so many skills that we learn as athletes, and sometimes we don't realise that we have them until they're maybe needed or until it's too late sometimes. So we just want to make sure that athletes are aware of their skills that they have, can highlight them and further develop them and use them in a great way. Because often, more than not, they can be extremely valuable in the workplace. So today's webinar will consist of a couple of different elements. Firstly, we have Nina Perry, a career development consultant at Griffith University, who will just go through a presentation on how to identify and best transfer your skills that you have developed in elite sport. And then we'll follow with more of a discussion with Naomi Carthy, who's the manager of the sports college, and myself, both Olympic gold medalists, and we've been through, that transition. And along with Tom Nichols, who played 10 years with the Gold Coast Suns and has now recently transferred into the workplace and is also a Griffith Uni graduate. So we'll introduce Naomi and Tom a bit later on, but first I'd like to introduce Nina, who will be kicking it off with an engaging presentation. Now, anytime during the presentation that you'd like to ask a question or have a comment, please, in the Q&A function of this Teams chat, certainly type down any questions or comments that you may have, and we'll do our best to answer them as we go through the presentation, but we'll certainly leave some time at the end. So over to you, Nina, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Duncan, and welcome everyone. I am a career development consultant at Griffith University. My mission every day is to help increase the employability of our students and to help them build career management skills that they will use for the rest of their life. I wanted to give my thanks to the Sports College for inviting me to present today. I have a background in psychology, and in a past life I also worked in the corporate world as a marketing professional. So blending these interests means that I help with the mindset that underpins developing and navigating a meaningful career. And I also love to assist students in marketing themselves effectively to employers. I am part of a team of 6 spread between Nathan and the Gold Coast. I'm on the beautiful Gold Coast campus today. And we're a free service to all Griffith students. And we can help with anything related to navigating your career and obtaining work. So please seek us out if you ever need any support. So jumping in, before we begin, I just wanted to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we're meeting today, and we'll all be on different lands, and pay respect to the elders past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. So today, I will be covering these 4 main questions, and I do invite you to take notes throughout, and please ask any questions at any time. I also wanted to say congratulations for attending, whether you are with us during the live event or whether you'll be watching a recording of this later. I really congratulate you on prioritising your career development. And why is this topic important? You've probably heard of the term employability and have an understanding of what it is. From a career development perspective, employability and employability skills are central to the work that we do, and in the employability of all students at Griffith is a strategic pillar of the university. But that's not the only reason why it's important. After doing this work for over 8 years, I know one of the biggest problems is we all have a strengths blindness and a skills blindness. We think that everyone does the same things the way we do them, and that what we do is really not that different or special to someone else. This perception influences our ability to really understand and sell ourselves to others. And if we're unable to do this, it really greatly impacts how we manage and progress through our careers. Today, working through these questions on the screen and hearing from athletes at the end about how they've navigated their employability will leave you with a solid foundation of understanding your unique skills and how to harness these. So first of all, I would love to start with a definition. I'll just pause for a moment so you have a chance to read this. So as you can see, employability is multifaceted, and the outcome of being employable simply means that you're meeting and hopefully exceeding the needs and requirements of an employer. Employability skills are things that make you great at your job. We build on these skills throughout our life, and there is a constant movement in the skills required by employers due to the rapidly changing work environments that we experience. For example, just who knew how good we will all be at Zoom meetings thanks to COVID? So that virtual skill set has really jumped high up the requirements of an employer as a skill set. Now, employability skills, I like to think of them as being made up of three different components. Firstly, you have your transferable skills. These are the core skills that are valued by most employers, and you will pick up and use these across jobs, every job role you have. You are developing these through your career as a professional athlete. The skills that you are building now can be transferred to just about any job that you will ever have. The key is in identifying them and selling them to people outside of your sport. Secondly, we have discipline and knowledge skills. So these are the ones developed during your study. For example, technical skills such as computer programs, developing a campaign for a public health promotion, knowing how to complete a tax audit, performing CPR as a paramedic. Those are the ones that you are crafting during your study. Lastly, we have personal skills. These are the ones you call on to perform successfully at work. Employers really value these, and they're becoming more overt in asking for them in job applications. They are also sometimes known as personal attributes. You might see them listed like that on a job advertisement. Some examples of these include motivation, drive, passion, enthusiasm, positive attitude. So as you can see, those are the three sorts of areas that we start to work on when it comes to identifying our skills. Now, just as you have clear goals involving in your sporting life, so improving your performance as an athlete, as a professional, you will also be continuously working on developing your employability throughout your life. For right now, as students at Griffith, this will look like building your discipline knowledge through your studies, and then also taking the skills from your sporting life, as well as anything outside of this, perhaps volunteer work or whatever else you have time for, then reflecting on these different domains and identifying how this makes you employable once you leave university. So this is what we're going to start discussing ways on how to do this in the next few slides. So let's just take a moment to think, wow, what skills have you gained from sport, study, and just life in general? Just taking a moment to think about what pops up. I've got some suggestions for you. First of all, and to be honest, most Griffith students forget about these, but you have skills that you are developing during your degree, and we call these the Griffith graduate attributes. All Griffith students can claim these as their attributes because they are embedded into every single degree program at Griffith. For example, you'll be tested on your communication ability through your written assignments, group presentations, oral presentations. You would have studied innovative practices relating to your professional area of study. And every Griffith student leaves with the ability, a really high ability to think critically. And that's a game changer in the employment market. Please don't forget about these skills because they make up an important part of your professional story outside of sport. Next of all, we have these employability skills. So this relates to the earliest slide that I showed. We're really turning to athlete-specific skills here. As you can see, this is just the beginning of some of the skills you have developed during your time as an elite athlete, although you might not have recognised them in yourself just yet. Some of those really meaty transferable skills that are valued by every employer include communication. So you would do this on a daily basis with your coach, your support crew, your team members. Maybe you speak to potential sponsors. Maybe you have to speak to journalists, sporting officials. The list goes on. Teamwork is also a skill that's naturally developed in sporting teams. I think most people, their mind immediately goes to a sporting environment, team environment when you think of teamwork. But perhaps you might be joining us today and you're an athlete in an individual sport. I'd like for you to think about the team around you and how you interact and manage and co-manage your support network. I mean, we all know that no person truly achieves anything on their own, so there'll always be that team surrounding you. Take some time to reflect on how you've developed the skill of working within a team and perhaps managing this team that is around you. Turning to the personal skills needed for success in the role, here are some examples that I've listed on the right, and these are inherent to the role of an elite athlete. I've spoken to many employers who look for candidates with a sporting background solely because of these personal traits you have developed. The opportunity here is for you to be explicit about them when you are applying for jobs. Don't forget about them. And of course, you'll also have the ones in the middle, so your discipline-specific knowledge and skills. It's a great thing to dive into those course profiles, have a look at what you are developing as far as your degree goes as well. So remember how I mentioned that most of us have a strengths blindness and a skills blindness? I just wanted to step you through a way that we can start to really reflect and identify our unique skills. I've got two suggestions for you from this slide. First of all, think about relying on others and talking to others. So you might have a coach, you might have someone in a sports college that you can ask, you might have some team members. I want you to sit down with them and say, what skills do you see me use? Think about, if you can, the employability skills that you might have in mind as well. But ask them, what have you seen me do well? What skills can you see me developing? Often that's a great way for us to gather knowledge about ourselves. Secondly, and I know most of you will probably have to do reflections as part of your studies, I hear about that a lot, and possibly your training. However, developing a routine of consistent reflection on what you're being exposed to skills-wise is a practice that will really set you apart from others when it comes to managing your career. So as a framework for reflection, please consider this method on the screen. Think about a really challenging situation in the past, something that made you feel quite uncomfortable or really pushed you out of your comfort zone. Typically, during this moment, you would have been developing a skill because in most cases that growth and development, it can be challenging and we have that sort of emotional reaction to it. For example, something like maybe you asked to attend a networking event and you were asked to speak to a group of people about your sport or profession. You may have found this to be a bit uncomfortable because it was something that you really haven't done before. But during this time, what you are actually developing is your professional communication skills. And we know these are quite different to the skills that you would use when you're just speaking to a teammate or a friend. You had to speak in a professional sense. So reflect on this and think, what was the learning opportunity there and what was I developing? Another example might be when you have been challenged to manage your time as far as your training goes and handing in assignments. You're definitely building that great professional skill of time management. So once again, think about that challenging time and think, what was I developing when I was doing that? And how can it translate into the world of work? Another way to do it at a bit of a creative way is a mind map. Now, once again, I'm just going to pause for a moment so you have time to take in the information on this screen. So on this screen, we have an elite athlete that has sat down and done a bit of a brain dump as far as what their skills are and where they would have got them from. So you can see some beautiful skills listed on this page. When I coach people in this area of identifying skills, I really encourage them to expand their mind map as much as possible and try to include all areas of life. So, for example, activities such as volunteer work. I see a lot of people who do the Duke of Edinburgh award scheme during school. You might be involved in the local community. You might be involved in your local church. You might volunteer as a surf life-saving officer. Some people I've met have set up their own businesses or they're working in small businesses. They're learning a musical instrument. You might be employed part-time. There is just so many areas in life where you actually pick up transferable skills. So I would really encourage you to think outside of sport, outside of uni, what else do I do and what skills would I be using during that experience? I wanted to highlight here that employers really, really value skills that you gain during sport, and they gain unpaid skills in other areas as well, like volunteer work. It's really important to identify the skill, but also really important to identify the source, because this means that we need to maintain evidence of how we developed a skill, and that's where the source comes in. This is going to be part of your career management process for the rest of your life. You might get the question, so what makes you good at communicating? You need to think about a story. You need to have that source there to say, I developed that during the time when I had to do a lot of presentations for sponsors. I got asked to do a lot of speaking at corporate events. That's why we need the source. Okay, the source is key. And it's your evidence to back up your claims. Okay, we've had a look at skills. We've looked at how do I start to identify my unique skills? What skills could I have developed if I've missed a few in my brain dump? There's some other suggestions there for you. I now want to turn to, outside of here, what skills are employers looking for? It's really important to identify what the market is telling us. So what skills do employers want? Once again, I'm just going to pause for a moment so you can just take in a little bit of the information from this slide. So this research was conducted at the end of last year, so 2020, by McCrindle and the Australian Association of Graduate Employers. So participants in this research were both private and public organisations. Most of them were in Australia's top 50 employers, such as AMP, ANZ, Deloitte, Macquarie, Unilever. And every year, these people employ large quantities of graduates into their graduate programs. So they are a great source of information about what industry is looking for. As you can see there, the top 3 skills, communication, teamwork and interpersonal skills, they're our heavy hitters. They rarely change from year to year. We see those consistently come up. As you can see here, they are assessed during the recruitment process, and the graduate employers deem them as extremely important in the process of their decision making when it comes to who are we going to hire. The fourth skill I wanted to highlight, now this has moved up the list and it's moved up in lightning speed due to the challenges of COVID. So most employers that I speak to these days are now saying we need a resilient workforce. I have to say that most people, most students who I speak to, find this quite a hard skill to quantify in the application process. As you can see, it's assessed and it's important. But as elite athletes, I wanted to highlight that not only would you possess this skill due to the nature of your profession and your life, but how important it is for you to communicate it clearly to that graduate employer. This will definitely set you apart from others. And it's really good just to have this understanding of what the market is saying and what they are looking for. Another of this research that I really wanted to share with you was the feedback on what skills do candidates lack. I'll just pause for a moment so you can take this in. So the top two, understanding of the organisation and commercial awareness, are skills that are missing from graduates. I hear this absolutely every day within my practice when I speak to hiring managers. They are consistently saying to me, please just send me someone who understands me, the employer, and the organisation that I'm working in. I wanted to highlight that this is really easily fixed. All it requires is putting your great research skills into action. Investigating graduate employers using the internet is simply the easiest way to attack this. I also wanted to encourage you to use whatever opportunities are presented to you as an elite athlete with a sports college, such as networking events, speaking with sponsors, attending seminars like this, being exposed to industry. Start to think strategically about how you can gather information about the field that you hope to enter once you leave Griffith. So you might, for example, really want to work for a large organisation like Microsoft. You might network and speak to someone through the sports college or be exposed to someone in some way who already works there. Talking to them and introducing yourself and gathering their information is very strategic and a great way to manage your career while you're still here. As you can see, third on the list is a relevant work experience, which from my perspective is no surprise. I hear this constantly as well. And it can be a barrier for athletes in particular. All graduates have skills gaps, so to that extent you're not alone. However, there are some unique opportunities you can take advantage of as members of the sports college to help you in this area. And I'm just going to dive into those on our next screen. Before I do that, I just wanted to say the first part to start identifying skills that you might be missing is also starting to look at job ads and some of these hyperlinks that are on the screen. So Job Outlook, the National Skills Commission. These is where you can find information about skills that employers are looking for your industry. I also encourage you to have a look at job advertisements, have a look at them on Seek. Jump onto LinkedIn if you're not already. There are a lot of jobs advertised on LinkedIn, and there are a lot of professionals on LinkedIn who will be working in professions that are aligned to your professional future. Have a look at the skills that they have listed. And you might identify, just leave it one thing that you can work on. So one skill that you might be missing. For example, if I'm studying public health, I might identify health promotion officers, and I might look at the fact that they need project management experience. So I encourage you to use all of the support available from the sports college and while you're at Griffith to make this happen, to start to fill the skills gap in some way. Perhaps there is an internship offered in your degree that you could complete over just a couple of days during holidays or some downtime if you have any. You might attend a networking event and meet a professional who you could job shadow or do a virtual internship with that fits around your study and your training. Once again, try to think creatively and laterally. Reach out to support if you need it. If you've identified a skills gap and think, I would really love to fill this before I leave, reach out to the sports college, reach out to the Careers and Employment Service for help with this. Talk with industry professionals, that's that last point. I wanted to highlight too, if you haven't watched it already, we did do a networking seminar at the end of last year. It is loaded on the Sports College site. I would really encourage you to revisit that seminar. There were some great tips given and some great real lived experience in that networking seminar that I would really love for you to see. So we've started to talk about what skills do I have. We've thought about what skills are an employers looking for. We've even touched on, okay, there might be a skills gap. How can I start to fill it? The next thing I wanted to address is that employers just might not understand or appreciate how your skills relate to their organisation and their role. They might not understand the sporting context as well as you do. It's up to you to convey this. It's up to you to join the dots for them and show your transferable skills and really sell your story. So there are 3 quick techniques that I would like to show you to help with this. Now this slide, there is a little bit of information on it. So once again, I'm just going to pause for a moment just so you can have a quick read. And what this is all about is conveying your career story in person. So it could take the form of a job interview, a public interview, it could be a networking conversation, you might be thrown into a public place where you need to talk about yourself, any place where you wish to start to grow your professional profile. You might find talking about yourself to be a really uncomfortable experience, but there's 3 sort of aspects that can help you, the ones on this screen. So first of all, making your story their story. So finding that connection between your story as an elite athlete, their story as an organisation. How can your skills help their organisation? What could you bring to them that could help them in and move their organisation forward? I wanted to talk about how feelings are really important in storytelling. So finding that opportunity and channels to tell your emotional human side of the story. Emotions and memory are really closely linked. We tend to remember things better when emotions are involved. So making yourself memorable to others involves sharing some of those emotions of what you've gone through and how you develop your skills. Lastly, I would encourage you to embrace the intrigue. The greatest stories are about overcoming adversity, and I know that a lot of you would have this experience from your experience as an elite athlete. Embrace the intrigue that other people will have as far as your background in sport, how you overcame these struggles and what you did to move yourself forward. That's what makes a really interesting career story. Next, I just wanted to talk about selling your skills as far as your resume goes. I've seen over 2,000 resumes in my time at working at Griffith, and I can assure you there is nothing as far as a right or wrong resume, but there is definitely an effective and ineffective resume, and I want all of you to have a really effective resume. What that means is it's going to be relevant to the reader, so you're going to identify your transferable skills and you're going to look at your personal qualities and you're going to match these to the role. So when you are tailoring every single resume that you are sending out. That's why that source and evidence and brainstorming skills is really important. An effective resume really communicates the value you offer. So once again, that lovely skills and qualifications mix. How will you solve their problems? Right to that. An effective resume also really differentiates you from other candidates. So this is where it's really important to capitalise on your student athlete experience. Think about what makes you different with those transferable skills, those personal qualities, and include them into your writing. I just wanted to highlight too, we have a professional resume checking service. So as part of the Careers and Employment Service, we check resumes. So don't hesitate to upload your resume with a copy of the job advertisement, and we will get back to you definitely within 5 working days with some great actionable things that you can do to make it better if it needs it. Lastly, I wanted to cover selling your transferable skills in a more structured way, such as in a job interview or when responding to selection criteria. Please remember this slide when you are asked to do this. The STAR format is an industry standard for communicating your professional story and providing evidence of your skills. So this framework can be used when you're required to answer questions such as, can you tell me about a time when you had a challenging experience while being part of a team? So framing your response using the STAR framework, so situation, task, action and result, helps you to provide a really detailed answer. Please make sure that your response is extensive in the action component. An interviewer is really listening for the specific actions that you took so that they can picture you demonstrating the skill. A teamwork question can be particularly tricky because what you need to focus on is what you did and not what we as the team did. But the STAR format, it is not going anywhere. It is definitely all over industry. And once again, if you need any help or support in this area, don't hesitate to reach out. So thank you so much for listening. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you need any more support from the Careers and Employment Service. And I would now like to pass over to Naomi.
Okay, I'll jump in there. Thank you very much, Nina. I think that's a brilliant presentation. This presentation is going to be sent out to all of you via email, but also obviously on our our YouTube channel and videos on the Sports College website. But I think there were some some great topics and skills there that we need to identify and learn how to transfer them over. But we do have Naomi that's going to facilitate the rest of the webinar today. And as mentioned, Naomi, Olympic gold medalist in water polo, in various leadership positions as well. And so she's going to facilitate the Q&A and introduce Tom. So thank you very much, Naomi.
Thanks very much, Duncan. Welcome everyone, and also a big welcome to our special guest and one of, I would say, Sports College's all-time favourites, Tom Nichols. Thanks so much for joining us, Tom. Really appreciate your time from Melbourne. Tom, just to introduce you a little bit to everyone, but I'll get you, if that's all right, to tell a little bit of your story. Tom played with the Suns, the Gold Coast Suns, in the ruck position predominantly for about 9 seasons. And completed his Bachelor of Commerce degree with us sort of the end of 2019 and is now working down in Melbourne. Tom, can you just give us, to start with, a little bit of, I guess, career highlights, sort of how you went with uni and why you did that? And then, I guess, if you wouldn't mind too, can you just let everybody know how your skills from sport transferred, either helped you into the role that you're in and also how you're applying them in the role now?
Firstly, thanks everyone for attending, and thank you guys for having me. Favourite sports college was one that all teammates know about. But yeah, a little bit about myself, career highlights. This will be good. This should be a short introduction then. But no, I think as Duncan mentioned earlier, I was lucky enough to get drafted to the Gold Coast Suns when I was 17. So actually went up there, finished year 12, and yeah, was up there, played 45 games. But yeah, really enjoyed my time. Met some great people like yourselves, and yeah, got to live out a childhood dream. So that was extremely lucky and something I'm very grateful for. And then yeah, started studying with you guys at Griffith in 2011, I think it was. I think I might have taken a year off, but initially started studying law and commerce. Reason being, I just like everything, I watched some movies and was really attracted to sort of how barristers went about their work in court, and thought I could see myself sort of defending someone or presenting to the jury. But haven't found out it wasn't as enjoyable. So apologies if there's any law students out there. I'm sure you love it. The question was, what skills have been transferable, and am I still using them in my job? And the short answer is absolutely. I think you get some natural ones from competing in sport, whether it's individual or within a team. So yeah, just the ones that come to mind are work ethic. It's really interesting coming into a workplace that you notice some people don't have the same level of drive as like all of us did in our sporting careers. You wanted to be the absolute best, whereas some people, which is totally fine, but they don't want to be the best within the firm. So stuff like that. So work ethic, resilience is a massive one. I think Nina mentioned that in one of the surveys that they did. That was the 4th highest skill that was lacking in new graduates. So there's no surprise there. Yeah, it's great reflecting post-career on the skills that you've learned and how you implement them in your work life. Because again, as Nina opened with, while we're competing, we're so blinded by the skills that we are picking up, and you don't spend enough time reflecting on them and realising what you are actually learning along the way. So yeah, that's a little bit about myself, and I'll pass it back to you, Naomi, for questions.
Thanks, Tom. You're just dropping in and out a little bit, so I'm not sure if you can lean in, or I'm not sure why that is. But another question I probably wanted to ask both you, Tom, and also Duncan. So we're talking about transferable skills from sport, but I'm also interested to know when you had the opportunity through sport to actually gain experience or get opportunities that, you know, the normal person wouldn't get. Did you jump at those that were then, you know, also gave you employability skills? You know, and what sort of opportunities do you see athletes are able to get while they are still playing sport that actually, I guess, combine well with their sport transferable skills?
I'll jump in first, if you like, there. For me personally, Naomi, it was networking, communication, and public speaking as well, because I was naturally quite a quiet kid growing up. And didn't like the crowds, didn't really like meeting new people. But, you know, when the QIS or your sport or the AIS certainly put out PD options or professional development options for athletes, I was a bit hesitant to start with, but I jumped in and did all those kind of ones that put me in uncomfortable positions, because that not only made me more confident in those particular scenarios to the point where I could meet people, and I've certainly met a lot of people via networking functions and how to network that resulted in employment later on as well. If not employment, certainly sponsorships also. So, you know, for me, networking, communication, and public speaking really helped, I guess, land me in certain scenarios that advanced my career after sport. Tom, how about yourself?
Coming into finance, I knew that you had to be quite technical, and I know, again, Nina spoke about that, but networking and those people skills. Sorry, Naomi, can you hear me? Is this better?
It's a little better, yeah, thanks.
Yeah, sorry, as I was saying, it was more sort of the soft skills and personal skills, because I kind of knew that I was going to pick up the technical skills on the job and do some stuff outside of footy and sport to sort of upskill myself in there, but for me, that was never going to be my point of difference to land the job in the first place. So, as you said, networking, putting your hand up for all different kinds of things. So when I was injured, we had sort of the corporate boxes at Metricon Stadium, and I'd always interview someone. So Tony Cochran, for example, who's an incredibly smart man and done some really cool things, was able to interview him in front of a lot of corporates who were involved with the club. So that ticked the boxes of public speaking. Networking was sort of a byproduct of that. Yeah, that was the main sort of skill that I focused on.
One of the other things that I see a lot of opportunities for athletes in at the moment also is opportunities within your own sport too, which actually have the benefit of, you know, giving back to your sport and also developing some of your skills. So, you know, they're often looking for athlete representation on, you know, athlete commissions or speaking to, you know, whether it is something like the QAS or involvement in something that the AIS is doing in terms of getting feedback and being a part of a committee that is, you know, helping to give feedback around your sport is something that I know I certainly did as an athlete, and it sort of grew into some more leadership roles and board roles as sort of time went on. Probably just a little bit of a, you know, I think, Tom, you and I can probably speak after this to some of, you know, the really obvious teamwork skills that are transferable as athletes that come from team sports. But Duncan, if I can just ask you, because one of the things that I think a lot of athletes think is that things like communication and leadership and teamwork are very obvious skills that more traditional team athletes develop. But certainly in my time at sports college, I see a lot of those skills in individual athletes as well, and just wanted you to highlight some of the skills that individual athletes might be developing as well.
Yeah, sure, and that's a really good point because, as individual athletes, they don't often see themselves as leaders, but one of the key principles of leadership is actually leading yourself. You have to learn to lead yourself and be accountable and making the right decisions and, thinking critically and all those sorts of things. But you also have a team of people around you, your coach, your family, your support staff, your physiotherapist, your biomechanist, all the sports science, sports medicine team around you. So, it's when you lead, a lot of people do think I'm in a footy team or a water polo team or, whatever it may be. But I think even within the greater team environment like that, you have to learn to lead yourself. That is a self-driver. It helps motivate you because if you're relying on being led all the time, you're not going to get the most out of yourself and you'll just be kind of waiting there being told what to do next. And so you've got to learn to think proactively. You've got to learn to think and reactively as well at times. So it's extremely important to learn to lead yourself before you can actually lead others, I believe, in the first instance anyway. And so for me in rowing, I was in a single scull for a lot of my career and certainly a lot of my senior career as well, rowing a boat by myself. And yeah, I got a lot of time to rehearse how to lead myself. And I think that really benefited to when I did move into crew boats as well.
Tom, do you want to just touch on some of those key skills that you think come from a traditional team sport?
Yeah, for sure. I think, obviously, as we've spoken about before, teamwork's the main one. Apparently my sound's a bit better. I actually got these AirPods off JB Hi-Fi the other day, and they're a bit cheaper than retail. So there's a lesson in that. Don't cheap out. I just also wanted to give a quick shout out. I've got my mate just texted me. He's tuning in from all the way in LA. So Kiwi Bill, appreciate your presence, mate. Yeah, back to the skills. Teamwork's obviously the biggest one. I think competitiveness and sort of determination in team sports is also a massive one too, and that transfers to work life as well quite distinctly for me, because again, you just want to get the best out of yourself. Leadership as well, like Duncan spoke about. You have more responsibility and accountability in a team sport, looking after whether it be younger players or being put in those roles. There's quite a lot that you can go through. Communication, again, when you're out on the field or on the court, you've got to communicate verbally to your teammates in a split second. And so, yeah, if you can't do that, then you will fail, basically. And then I think the biggest one, well, it's applicable to individual sports too, is that just feedback. So that direct giving and receiving of feedback. Again, some people naturally don't like it, which is, again, fine and totally normal. But the more, like anything, the more exposure you get, the more you learn how to deal with it. And it's the exact same in the working environment. If you do some work that's not up to standard and your boss tells you that, then yeah, it's something that you can take on board, and it's the only way you can get better. So again, something that I've learned heavily, being a ruckman. For those who know AFL out there, being a ruckman, trying to kick the ball, I got a lot of direct feedback. I was always told to handball.
All right, cool. Thanks, Tom. We've got a couple of questions here, so we might come back to a chat with you, Tom and Naomi, in a minute, but we'll get through a couple of questions. One is potentially for you, Nina. There's a question. I'm updating my LinkedIn account, but have yet to add my sports background. Do you have an example of a LinkedIn profile that has this, or can I suggest any advice, Nina, in that?
Absolutely. So my biggest tip in that area would be just to start to have a look at different profiles that you can find on LinkedIn, and you can start to sort of get ideas of how people are touching on their sports background. So doing your own research online, and then reaching out to those people who you think might have a particularly good profile, having a chat to them, talking about what skills you can put onto your profile from your sporting background. That would probably, I hope that helps, but I always look at other people's profiles as well, just to start to get some ideas on what works well as far as that writing goes. Doing that self-reflection though, and putting your own unique spin on it is key.
Great, thanks.
Feel free to have a look at mine. I think that was Roxy. Look at my profile on LinkedIn and get my views up. I've got some sporting mentions in there.
So Tom, one for you. How did you personally go leaving sport, which is a full-time gig playing in the AFL, and go straight pretty much into a full-time working gig?
Yeah, great question. That to me is something that I thought I was really well prepared for, having finished my degree, doing 2 internships whilst I was playing, and constantly reaching out to people whenever I had time off and picking their brains as to what the industry looked like. But as you guys will attest to as well, and as the athletes out there will find out, it was the hardest transition of my life. As you mentioned, pretty institutionalized school from prep to year 12 straight into an elite sporting environment. I was as prepared as I could be, but it's something that it just completely uproots you and changes your routine and everything. And it was a period there where I almost lost my identity for a bit. So I was no longer a footballer. That'll always stay as part of it. But it was very, very sobering, I suppose. So I hope that's answered the question. So I suppose in summary, it was very difficult, but once I got back into another routine of working full time, my identity's changed, I suppose. So that was the biggest challenge for me.
Yeah, I think the whole identity issue when athletes, retire from sport and go on to other things in their life, it's very topical, it's massive, and perhaps we should consider a whole webinar on that alone, because it is extremely important. But one for you, Naomi, here from Kate, and Nina, you might like to follow on as well. So Naomi, what would you suggest elite athletes start to think about and prepare now whilst they are still students and competing in an elite level?
Sure. One of the things definitely is taking the opportunities you can, like I mentioned before. So sport will present some opportunities. Take the opportunities you can and record what it is that you're doing, because it's really easy to forget along your journey what you've done. So if they need someone to, as Tom was saying, be in a sponsor's box or present to the media or, speak back to the national sporting organisation, take the opportunities that you can and really record those. And also something that I've seen a number of athletes through sports college do where possible is, and again, Tom just mentioned it as well, is internships. So if you can fit in an internship within your degree and getting some experience in that, really great way to make connections in the industry, and also fit in some real meaningful work experience into your actual degree. I don't know, Nina, if you want to add something more to that.
That's such great advice, Naomi. Absolutely. Use all of the resources that you have at Griffith while you're still here. I guess my biggest tip would just be identifying that skills gap and thinking, well, eventually I would like to work in this particular area. What are some really simple steps that I can do now to start to develop those skills that I can close that skills gap? Ask for support. If you need to be a good communicator and deliver things, work out how you can build that more into your life now. And that will definitely help you transition into that professional role.
Great. I'm just going to go off on a tangent a little bit, and it relates to one of the questions that have come up. For me personally, something that was big for me in my sport that I did transfer over to the workplace is resilience and adaptability. Things don't always go your way in sport. We know that. Sometimes equipment doesn't turn up in terms of rowing boats. I've had that happen. Sometimes you get injuries and you've got to reset your goals. In 2008, my pair partner in rowing, Drew, he had a perforated disc during the game. So we had to be very resilient and adapt. And that's a story for another time. But it's the same in the workplace. It doesn't always go your way in the workplace. Sometimes work teams change. people leave, sometimes work requests or submissions get declined. And as athletes, we're used to kind of driving it and trying to seek success after success, but we do hit barriers from time to time. Same in the workplace. And I think it's those mechanisms that you'll learn as an athlete in how to deal with those issues and how to adapt and change when those barriers or when those circumstances hit you. That's how you can then learn how to adapt, in the workplace. Resilience and adaptability, you got to be open to change when in a new environment or when a barrier is there. You've got to be open to change on how to do it differently, but still achieve the same result that you want. Okay, so it's extremely important how to do it differently to still achieve the result that you want. It could be taking the long way around, setting new goals to still achieve the goal that you want at the end, because sometimes, to be honest with you, your boss may change tactics. He may change strategy. Duncan, stop working on that. I want you to do this over here now. And you've got to go, all right, okay, I've got to adapt to this. I've got a new goal to focus as well. The mechanisms that I learnt as an athlete, because it happens regularly. And Tom, you had injuries, we all have them, but it's how resilient you can be in those circumstances that are really important. And Tom, you can comment on that, but I'll read mate, Tom, how did you go with that? Because you did, you had a few injuries along the way. How did you, I guess, what mechanisms did you have during those injuries before you then maybe transferred those skills into the workplace?
Yeah, another great question. In terms of mechanisms I had in place before, I probably didn't have any, to be honest. And I think, obviously, you don't want injuries early on in your career, but the silver lining of that is that I had to learn from such a young age how to be resilient, how to bounce back, how to deal with adversity. And being at young age, I think you're at a more malleable state. So I was able to learn those lessons quicker. But you're absolutely spot on. Resilience, it's almost a buzzword at the moment, isn't it? And companies look for it, and it's a bit intangible, but I think it's a product of everything. So I spoke about feedback before. So if you cop a spray from your coach or whatever, and you go into your shell and roll up into a ball, then you're not showing great resilience. Whereas if you learn to deal with that, take it on board and improve, then you're building your resilience. And it's one of those things too, it's even like from your immune system, not to get technical at all, because I've got no experience in exercise science or anything, but if you build up, like you just continually rock up to training, get good sleep, whatever, you're building up that resilience. So consistency is another word and skill that I'd associate with it. Yeah,
and resilience and adaptable. Sometimes almost you just need to sit back and take a breath to take a moment and reassess, and that kind of can lead into the next question for you, Nina. That during COVID, all athletes had to become adaptable. There was lockdowns, there was isolations, there was all sorts of not problems, but environments that we had to adapt to. And athletes would get videos posted from athletes and watching our student athletes, training in this unique environment within their garage, within their backyard, wherever it may be. But our question from Tim is that he also learned to be adaptable during the year with his training. How would you explain this skill in an interview if you had to adapt?
Great question, excellent question. And the key, I think, here is storytelling. So once again, they might not understand your experience, so your lived experience, they're sitting outside of that. So delving into the real particulars of how you had to adapt. How did it change for you? How did it affect your performance? Really go into those specifics of the actions that you took to become more adaptable, and at the end tie it into their organisation. So to be able to say, I adapted myself, and in this organisation I could see that would make me really adaptable to changing workplace. So if you had to put me in that environment, I would be able to do that as well. So once again, focus on those storytelling skills. I guess that would probably be my biggest piece of advice.
Great, thanks. Final question for you, Tom, before we start to think about wrapping it up due to time. One question is, how did you find time for 2 internships while playing AFL? And you can answer that. But also, do you find the competitiveness that drove you to elite footy serves you well in the corporate environment, or have you found it necessary to temper that in some ways, relating to your career?
Yeah, great questions. Jack, firstly to your one, funnily enough, in Footyland anyway, you almost have more time, more downtime than you do when you're working 9 to 5 or 8 to 10, as is our case. But in terms of finding time, this is where, cheeky plug, Sports College are amazing. Not only did they like help us with a subject where we did an internship that counted for a subject, so I highly recommend, if that one's still around, doing that, because it's not only a great experience, but you tick a subject off. So in terms of finding time, I'd go in once or twice a week, and you have 2 days off, one of them being Sunday, so obviously you can't do that. So I'd go into my day off, and then another half day where we'd have half training. But in saying that, the footy club are also pretty accommodating too. So I just communicate, again, some more skills that are transferable to work-life balance or into your working life, of being organised and prepared and communicating well. So I'd communicate to the club what my schedule would look like with CBA, who was the most recent internship that I did. And then they'd cater training. If we had sort of cross training on that day, I'd be able to do it in the afternoon or vice versa. But yeah, surprisingly, you can find the time. It's just whether or not mentally and physically you're prepared to do it, or got enough energy to do it. Basically, that's the main challenge. And then the second part of the question, the competitiveness. In the corporate world, whenever there's ball games involved, the competitive nature definitely comes out. We had a social event last weekend where we played ping pong, shuffleboard and darts. Lost them all, but tried the hardest and sweated the most. So yeah, old habits die hard. But in terms of being competitive, I think, again, that's where the team environment helps. So whilst I want to be the best analyst, I'm also a part of a team, and I understand that the need of the team's greater than the need of the individual. So whilst I'm still competitive, yes, I suppose you do have to temper that competitiveness to make sure that you're not being overly competitive and stepping on your colleagues or teammates' toes. So hope that answers that one, Kiwi Bill.
I'll just ask one last question of the group, but before I do, I just really want to thank Nina for the presentation and actually putting some theory behind those transferable skills from elite sport. And Tom, thank you so much for engaging back with Sports College and providing your experience as, a recent graduate and, a very recent athlete of ours. So thank you so much for that. But we might just finish up. I might go to you, Tom, and then to you, Duncan, as your one takeaway, your biggest skill that you learned in sport that you apply or is transferable to the workplace.
My biggest takeaway would be, for those athletes attending online, tap into the Sports College, they're your best friend. Definitely helped us. I even had messages from teammates saying, geez, we got away with we got helped out with some exams and assignments so much. So definitely tap into them. And one skill is communication, I think that sort of underpins everything for me. So just, yeah, public speak, do whatever you can, just expose yourself to that. And yeah, thanks a lot for having me, guys. I really appreciate what you've done for me in the past. And yeah, I was going to say too, if anyone else has questions or whatever and wants to follow up, these guys have my details, so reach out, available whenever.
Thanks, Tom. I appreciate that. Naomi, for me, I won't say communication because Tom already said that. I won't say resilience and adaptability because I already highlighted that one. I won't say coachable because that's really high on the list as well, but I don't want to talk about that one. But goal orientated for me was pretty important. I had daily goals, I had weekly goals, and I certainly had goals in and around performance and how I wanted to race an individual, how I wanted to conduct myself on the water, how I wanted to conduct myself off the water. And there was all goals, with all of that. But the goal setting or the goal orientated is extremely important when you do have a barrier or you do have something happen to you. And I had a massive accident a few years ago, leading into Olympics, and I had to reset goals, couldn't go my traditional path of the way I wanted to get to where I wanted to go in terms of an Olympics. but I had to reset goals in and around, but still achieve it. So sometimes you have to, you have your goals, but be prepared for it to be flexible, but still have that end goal in sight. And so in the workplace, I certainly have goals, as my staff know, and as a team, we have goals as well. And without that kind of, multiple goals, it's really hard to know what you're striving for. And Naomi, actually, I have one for you, last one for you, because I want you to comment on this one. You were vice captain in 2000 Olympics when you won your gold medal. You were vice captain in 2004. So what leadership skills did you learn from those experiences that you've carried over to the workplace?
In the leadership team for both campaigns, leading in Athens, and like those skills that I actually learned in being the person that went between team management, all of the sports scientists, physio, doctors, etc., and also the teammates, and really listening to people and leading people is something that I still apply today, many years later. So that would be my biggest skill, I would say, is that leadership piece. So.
Great.
Okay, I think we better tie up there because we've run a little bit over time, but thank you again, everyone. And if you want to have a look at anything again, it will be available on the website very soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.